Sometimes humans have gone to terrifying lengths to please their gods, or simply out of fear. What you're about to see isn't fiction. These are real rituals pulled straight from the darkest corners of ancient history. Tonight, we travel through blood, fire, and ice. Here are 50 of the most horrifying and bizarre human sacrifice rituals ever practiced. Dim the lights and let the darkness speak.
Aztecs, hearts for the sun. On top of their pyramids, priests cut out the hearts of living victims still beating, offered to the sun so it wouldn't disappear. China, the living mummy. A Buddhist monk would seal himself alive in a tomb and die slowly, becoming a holy mummy over years, by choice. Vikings, blood for Odin. Captured enemies were sacrificed in rituals. Their blood was offered to Odin, the god of war and death. India, sati, wife burning. When a man died, his wife was sometimes forced or convinced to burn alive with his corpse. Loyalty or cruelty? Egypt, servants to the afterlife. When a pharaoh died, his servants were buried alive with him to serve him in the afterlife. Maya, the ball game of death. A sacred ball game was played, and sometimes the losing or winning team was sacrificed to the gods. Celts, the tree tomb. People were trapped inside hollow trees and burned alive, a gift to nature gods. Incas, children of the ice. Young, pure children were taken high up snowy mountains and left to freeze to death, untouched, divine offerings to the gods of the sky. Carthage, babies for Baal. Babies were burned alive inside a bronze statue of the god Baal. Their screams were said to please him. China, the bloody wall. Laborers who died building the Great Wall or were killed were buried inside it. Blood for strength. Scandinavia, grave servants. When a tribal leader died, his wives and slaves were buried alive with him for company in the afterlife. Korea, sacrifice under the bridge. To make bridges stable, children were buried alive beneath the pillars as offerings. Inuit, death by choice. Elders would walk into the frozen sea alone, not forced, just tradition. One last sacrifice for the tribe. Japan, human pillars, hitobashira. Builders would bury a person alive inside the foundation of a building to keep it standing strong. Babylon, virgins for the rain. Young girls were sacrificed during droughts. They believed their death could make the skies weep. Toltecs, skinned alive. Victims were skinned and the priest would wear the bloody flesh, symbolizing rebirth. Gauls, blood for the Mother Earth. Priests mutilated themselves, pouring their blood into the soil, believing it brought fertility. Native Americans, the Sundance. Victims were pierced with hooks, hung from trees, and spun under the sun until they bled into trance. China, girls in the well. To summon rain, girls were thrown alive into deep wells. Their screams echoed up to heaven. Fiji, women for the gods. Some women, willingly or not, offered themselves to be sacrificed to tribal gods. Scotland, the bog bodies. Bodies thrown into peat bogs, perfectly preserved for centuries. Maybe murder, maybe offering. Moche, throat of the gods. In ancient Peru, victims were lined up and had their throats slit one by one, blood flowing like a ritual river. Bulgaria, fire cleansing. People willingly jumped into fire, believing death by flames would cleanse their sins. Nigeria, the blood doll. Victims were tied to wooden dolls and decapitated as part of black magic rites. Central Africa, weapons of blood. Before battle, a victim's blood was smeared on swords and spears for strength and victory. Mongolia, sacrifice for the Khan. Enemies were killed at the feet of the great Khan, their blood feeding the earth beneath his throne. Rome, gladiators' blood. Some believed that drinking the blood of a fallen gladiator could cure disease or give youth.
29. Siberia, ice circle of death. Children were left alone in frozen circles, surrounded by wolves, sacrificed to the gods of the north. 30. Parthian warriors, buried with their horses. Fallen warriors were buried alive alongside their horses so they could ride together into the afterlife. 31. Mohenjo-daro, drowning in the sacred tank. Women were drowned in ritual water tanks to appease the rain gods. 32. Suya tribe, Brazil, ritual suffocation. Sick children were gently suffocated, believed to be reborn through the spirit world. 33. Guanche people, Canary Islands, cliff of death. Victims were thrown from towering cliffs. Death had to be painful to be honorable. 34. Papua tribes, eaten by faith. Enemies were eaten alive, not for hunger, but as an offering to the war gods. 35. Axum Empire, the shadow offering. If your shadow fell on the sacred altar, you were chosen. You had to die. 36. Sumerians, half-dead burials. Slaves were tortured nearly to death, then buried alive as part of royal rituals. 37. Papuan widows, knife of devotion. When a man died, his wife was expected to stab herself and be buried beside him. 38. Amazon tribes, killing the twin. One twin was seen as cursed. One must live, one must die. 39. Ancient Lebanon, moonlight sacrifice. Nude women were sacrificed under the full moon, believed to attract blessings. 40. Tanzanian warriors, heart-eaters. Warriors ripped out and devoured their enemies' hearts to gain courage and strength. 41. Kumba tribe, smile or die again. Victims had to smile at the moment of death. If not, they were considered unacceptable sacrifices. 42. Taiwan ancients, buried with the dead child. If a baby died, the mother was sometimes buried alive with it to stay together in the spirit world. 43. Central Asian steppes, hanging the innocent. Children were hanged in front of temples for luck and divine protection. 45. Ancient Yemen, burned in stone graves. People were placed alive into hot stone tombs. Their pain summoned fertility. 46. Early Slavs, fire as purification. People were soaked in oil and set on fire. Their smoke was seen as a divine offering. 47. Philippines, bamboo death tree. Victims were tied to sacred trees and sliced with bamboo until they bled out. 48. Madagascar, family sacrifices. Sometimes entire families were killed together, believed to please gods with unity in death. 49. Samburu, Kenya, the bloody smile. Lips of victims were carved into permanent smiles, then they were killed. 50. Northern Siberia, ice hut test. Sick children were left alone in icy huts. If they survived till morning, they were healed. If not, they were accepted by the spirits. 51. Micronesia, drowning in the blue sea. People were tied to stones and thrown into the sea, becoming sacred fish in the afterlife. These weren't just legends. They were real. Thousands of lives ended in blood, in fire, in ice, all in the name of belief, fear, or desperation. We might be shocked now, but for them, it was destiny. Which of these do you think was the most terrifying? Leave a comment, like if you survived the horrors, and subscribe Mythora for more stories from the dark side of history. Until next time, stay curious and stay brave.